We're back with another episode of the One Pour Problems podcast, and today we have a great episode for you. I'm joined by the COO of ACMT, John Uliano. Super excited to have you on the show today.
Yes, Sal, very excited to be here. Very excited for today.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a bunch about extreme ownership in leadership and how you take full responsibility for success and failures within an organization. And so I'm definitely looking forward to the insight and hearing a little bit more about how you do that in your organization. But first, we're going to start off with talking a little bit about the drink that we have. And so I know that you asked us to bring on the Old Forester. And for those who may not be familiar, there is a zillion Old Foresters out there.
Yeah, correct.
But this one I definitely needed to bring today. And I needed to bring it because this is probably one of the only Old Foresters that I have not had. And for those who know, I'm obviously a big bourbon guy, 300-something bottles in my collection. Like, it's always fun to try something that I haven't had. So I'm excited to be able to have you try this today. But tell us why Old Forester. Why is this the drink of choice?
Oh, I actually am super excited that because I have not had that version either.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited as we were talking a little bit off camera, the fact that we had met many moons ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, with Foster in a couple gatherings that we had when he was inviting us to explore our palates. I think the first one was actually with port wine. And I was invited by Brian Montanari, brought me along as a guest, which I was super excited to be part of the team. And I won't forget the fact that Foster came from Portugal, and he had a number of different port wines. My wife is Portuguese, so I was excited to bring what I had, which was a very special port wine as well, and to share that with the group. And then there was several months, our time had passed by, and we did collectively get together again for a bourbon tasting. And so one of the bottles that someone brought was Old Forester, which I had never had. And so through that tasting, I was really turned on to it, really excited to have it, talked about it with my friends, shared it, had it at a number of different occasions. And so when this opportunity came about to have a conversation with you, seeing with the history that we had with Foster and Charles IT, I was super excited to pick this because I think it had a lot of meaning for the fact that this is what I had originally had exposure to the bourbon, so pretty excited about it.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. I'm excited to try it. Cheers! Thanks for coming on.
Cheers. And we do look in the eyes.
We do. You have to.
Excellent.
Yeah, that is great.
Yeah, it's really tasty.
Yeah. So the Old Forester ones, like I said, it's the 10-year. They don't have any age-stated bourbon anymore because of most bourbon during like the boom of everything, like there wasn't enough supply, and the only way to age the bourbon is to literally let it sit there. So it's pretty unique to be able to start getting some of these ones with actual like age statements on it. So like the youngest actual like liquid in this bottle is 10 years old.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I always I talk to friends and family when they ask about it. I always kind of give them the advice, just whatever you like the most, that's what's good, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the fact that I haven't had this and it's actually quite scrumptious, I'm really excited. So thank you very much for picking this one out. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And listen, you can thank me all you want, but you're the first bourbon drinker in like 10 episodes. It's been a long time since I've had a bourbon on the show, so I'm excited to be able to bring it back.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. So now you obviously have a pretty extensive background, and when we first met, you were at a different organization, and then the role that you're in today. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your background and what kind of led you to the role that you're in now with ACMT.
Yeah, sure. So I've been basically in manufacturing my entire life. Started, fortunately enough, with the wire mold company. Spent over 15 years under the leadership of Art Byrne, his executive team. So, I feel very fortunate that when I grew up within that company, in terms of continuous improvement and respect for people and an enterprise-wide approach to continuous improvement, I was very, very fortunate. I've taken on a number of different roles since I was with the Wire Mill Company, and I've served a number of roles within the company.
Yep.
But always taking those principles that I'd learned and then learning and expanding upon them as I continued my career. Was at Danaher for a number of years, HID Global, responsible globally for continuous improvement and for the Americas. So I consider myself very fortunate to have the ability to learn, teach, and grow within an organization, and to do that. And within that journey is to develop other people so that they continue to be successful in their roles. So I'm currently at ACMT. We're an aerospace manufacturing company. So we make a variety of different products for the aerospace industry. We make the fan blade cover for the gear turbofan. We actually stood up a foundry pouring molten aluminum to make aluminum foam that goes into the gear turbofan. We have a bracket side or value stream where we make from, we'll say, complex brackets all the way down to simple brackets that go onto the engine. And then we have what we call the composite side of the business. It's really putting rubber on metal. And so 4 different value streams and growing. Yeah. We are really excited about the future. I joined because of the fact that the ownership is very entrepreneurial, and we're continuing to grow. We have a great team. And so, in my career, again, being able to bring some of the tool sets that I have to help develop and grow the organization is something I'm super excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. So what exactly, like in your role, what is your main responsibilities, right? You're in the COO role. So what exactly does that entail, like a day-to-day?
Oof. Okay, it's good. Good question. There's quite a bit of ground to cover. I always kind of try to appreciate the fact that in my role, you have to step within all the various levels of the organization. So I love nothing more than to be out on the floor. And so there's certainly time that's spent out on the floor, walking, talking to people, understanding the process, understanding their problems, where they see them, but then certainly having to shift to more of the strategic side, understanding what the vision, mission, purpose is, and then aligning all of our team to execute on that. So a lot of after we set that vision and mission and share that with the organization, a lot of what I consider my job to do on a day-to-day basis is to remove the barriers, right? So have a clear vision, communicate that to the rest of the team, and then work to instill that you have the right people in the right place in the organization, and then be a roadblock remover. So a lot of my day is we want to obviously drive accountability, drive metrics so that we're making the right decisions. We try to make them as real time as possible. So the more visuals on the floor, the better. So working with the team to implement as much visual management as possible. But as I progress day to day and week to week, it is, okay, how do I remove barriers for my team to execute? And it's all around driving value for the customer, right? And you probably heard this and have seen it in some of the podcasts, right? What's the customer willing to pay for, and whatever form that is. And lots of times, for us, it's it could be the service that we provide or the lead times, but it's actually obviously the product as well. Sure. So having our operators be armed with the proper training, having them be armed with the right material, giving them the right tools, giving them the right environment for them to continue to implement continuous improvement is a big part of my job every day. So making sure my team's aligned with servicing the operators that are really delivering the value to our customers is a big piece of what I focus on almost every day.
Yeah, and that sounds like it's a thread that I've been kind of seeing throughout most of these conversations is individuals like yourself, right? You're in a leadership role, and most people think about leaders and they're in an office and like they're they're there and everyone else is on the ground kind of doing the work. But what I'm seeing in more and more of these conversations are, in order to be a great leader, you have to be on the floor. You have to understand what everyone is dealing with, right? The only way you can like remove the roadblocks and do those things if you truly understand like what is happening and why those roadblocks are there, right? Like, is that something that you're like, that's why you're doing it?
Yeah, it's absolutely, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I found also a big piece of it is, as you have an organization that becomes larger and larger, your visibility sometimes decreases. And so you might have a stellar team, but their perception of what's wrong or where the rubber meets the road might be a little different. So if you get disconnected from what's happening on the floor, then you could truly lose sight of the reality of what's happening within the organization. So ensuring that you're staying in touch with that and seeing the different perspectives that people have for the challenges they have, and stay connected with that, so you can always calibrate as you're touching all points in the organization to ensure that you're obviously, as the roles that we're in is driving the organization to address those types of issues, so that we can, again, make sure we're delivering value. Personally, my goal is, I don't consider myself being successful unless my team's being successful. And so if that's not the case, then I feel like I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that ties into your, back to the original topic of the episode, which is that extreme ownership, right?
Yeah.
And I know that obviously has resonated with you in your career, and that book has like kind of shaped your outlook on leadership. So for those who may not know what that is, like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. It's one of, I'll consider the tools in the toolkit, but it's not so much only a tool, but it is a mindset, right? So if you haven't heard of extreme ownership, it's really, Jocko and Leif were ex-Navy SEALs and had a lot of adversity to overcome. But they found that framing of leadership, they found very successful in terms of building teams and being able to execute and develop high-performing teams. Mm-hmm. And so really the mindset in a summary is to take ownership for everything that's happening. I think you mentioned, right, for the successes and the failures. And so when you really step back and say, look, no matter what happens, I own this. You could have a very, very large organization. I had one that spanned across multiple continents. But if there was a safety incident, that was my fault.
Yeah.
Because I am responsible. So taking that type of ownership and then embedding that into what you do and helping and hopefully instilling that into your people as they share the beliefs, hopefully, that you have within the organization. As they have that ownership, you can drive a lot of positive change. But in a summary, saying that you are ultimately responsible for what's happening one way or another, and then obviously that'll drive your actions to ensure that you're going to address issues instead of blaming people for them. You have to be responsible for that.
Yeah. So you talk about. It's one of the tools in the the tool belt, right? But why is this one so significant? Because there's definitely a bunch of other tools that you have in that tool belt, but why extreme ownership? Like, why is this the thing that you're like, I'm going to embrace this. Like, I'm going to make sure that this is how all of my people, my team, and how I operate myself. Like, why is that the one thing that is like prominent?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for me, it's always trying to build something, obviously, that's larger than yourself, and to have people believe in that. So that type of a leadership, that type of ownership is, I think, helps to be infectious within the rest of the organization. You certainly have heard of command and control, and I'm sure as all people are being educated now, it's not really the way to run an organization.
Yep.
However, it's always a lot different to say that you don't want to do that versus to actually execute on that. And so when I looked at extreme ownership, it's actually funny. I commented. I was driving on the way here, thinking to myself, I did always tell my children that you should avoid extremes, and so this might be the exception in the rule. But but when you actually go above and beyond to say, look, no matter what's happening within your organization, I own that. Then when you have the rest of the organization see that, and then they start to adapt that type of philosophy, then you're building something that's much larger than yourself, as everybody's kind of stepping up and saying, "Oh no, I've got that ball." And in lots of cases, it might be, not even within their scope of responsibility. Now, obviously, everybody has to play their part and be in their lane. But when you have people reaching out to help teammates and to overcome whatever the issue is, to solve a problem, or I had an example just recently, like this week, where we have one of our value streams is struggling because we have an influx of demand and there's a lot of requirements and of skilled labor. And so we got together with the other value stream leaders, and they're basically raising their hand saying, "Hey, I can offer up these people at these times so we can help you deliver, because we know that value stream is in need of resources." So really, them taking ownership, and then hopefully not having to have myself or another leader in the organization be there to have to solve their problems, but they see that they have a teammate that's in need, and they're offering up solutions, and they're so even though it's not their responsibility, it's not in their value stream, they're literally going out of their way to help their teammate to be successful for our customers. And to me, that this week especially was a real-time example of why I feel it's so important to kind of instill that type of values into our leadership, and why obviously I feel the company typically will take on the characteristics of their leader. So if you, as a leader in the organization, take extreme ownership, then I feel your team's going to do the same.
Yeah, that's huge, right? I think it's one of the things that I feel most organizations miss. They don't spend enough time empowering their team to it's take ownership without being the owner, right? But like you want a group of people that truly care, right? Like I always joke, I'm like, when I'm hiring people, like I want to hire people who actually give a shit, like right? Like that's what I want. I want those people on my team, because I know if like you said, one of the value streams is struggling, I know that I have people that are going to jump in, figure out what we need to do as a team, myself included, right, to go actually fix that problem, make a difference. And that I think is one of the hardest things to teach. So, you doing that in the organization, how have you brought that, to ACMT? Like where have you implemented that, and like how do you roll that out if you're not used to that in an organization? Yeah,
it's certainly not perfect. I'll tell you that. Like this is part of any organization, is you have to you have to have perseverance. You have to continue to drive to what you're trying to accomplish. So we're not perfect, but part of what I'm trying to instill into the team is that they do have the capability of influence. So meaning, no matter where you are within the organization, you have a sphere of influence. You might not even be in charge of people. You might be an engineer, an individual contributor, but you have influence over people. You have influence over process. You have influence over the outcome of the organization. So in terms of the implementation of how you go about doing this, is really trying to empower people, encourage people to understand that. So as you're talking to, I have some leaders that, again, I try to instill that you're not a victim. You're not a victim of this. You are empowered to make changes. And so we actually, in one organization I was with, we came up with a list of questions that we said, listen, if you can answer yes to all these, then go ahead and do it. And obviously we're in aerospace, but so we have to have regulations. We can't just change willy-nilly, but we always said, look, if you are, if you're willing to be accountable for the decision that you made, if it's ethical, if it's right for the company and the customer, and you're willing to stand by, that decision, then go ahead and do it. So we want to ensure, and actually this is part of our onboarding process, as someone comes in, that they understand that they're coming in with authority. Just because you're new doesn't mean, okay, you have to do it the way we did it. As you're coming into the organization, we're expecting that you come with outside views. You have different worldly experiences that we don't have, and so we're expecting when you come in that you're probably the best person to say, "Hey, why do we do it this way?" or challenge what we do. And I learned a hard lesson, many years ago when we had a new person came in, and I thought the world of them. I thought that they were, a hard charger, and they were, going to make a lot of changes in the company. And I found over time that they weren't really happy in their role. And as we got down to the root of the problem that we had, or at least that the company had that I own, is that they didn't feel empowered. So now we try to make sure they're very clear that when someone comes in the organization, you are empowered to make decisions. You're here to make decisions. We hired you to use your brain, not just to take orders and to blindly follow, what we're currently doing. So in terms of the implementation, it's really, for me, an education or educating our workforce to understand no matter where you are in the organization, you can influence change, you can make change, and then supporting them with whatever initiatives or endeavors that they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think that, again, it's exactly how we operate, right? Like our organization's the same exact way, where it's, I want the person that is doing all of the new computer setups to give me the feedback about what sucks about this process, right? Like, what do you not like? Like, this continues to fail every time I do it. Well, great. Like, bring that up. Let's go and figure out how to solve that, right? Because I don't get to spend my time understanding what's happening in that process. But what I hear is, some of our clients or, prospective clients coming on are like, this is a pain point for me, right? And I'm like, well, what are we doing to solve that? Right. And the person who's going to know the best is the person that is doing it. And so empowering them to say, like, hey, I think there's a better way, or at least being able to challenge it. Like, is there something better than this? Like, why do we use this? Why do we do it this way? I think that's huge in empowering people to make those decisions. But I think the coolest part that I'm getting out of the way that you think about this is that most times people come onto the show and they're talking about their leadership and their journey and the things that they're doing, but not often are we talking about how a leader doesn't mean that you're in the C-suite of your organization. Right, yeah. You can be a leader on the shop floor, right? People will still be drawn to you. They'll still listen to the things that you say, respect the words that you're telling them or the process to go follow. And I think not enough people understand the power they have of influence being a leader on the floor. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely key, and it's obviously like I think my greatest struggle with the implementation of this, and just what you had mentioned, was ensuring that when you do have someone that's on the floor and they understand that they do have that sphere of influence, that they can make change, that they can influence people, that they can do things for the better. Yep. If my team, and I'll be honest, it's usually resource constraints. There's so many opportunities for us to fix things, yep, that the list is long. So if you have all of the folks that are really doing the hard work, that are adding the value, that say, look, I would like to have XYZ in order to do my job more efficiently, or to help my teammates, then if we don't have enough resources to listen and to execute on that, it's definitely a frustrating point, because I feel like I'm letting them down, because you don't want to lose that voice, because after you encourage them to speak, the worst thing you can do is have them speak and then it either fall on deaf ears or not execute on what they're asking for, yep, and not to be able to support them. So that's definitely one of the challenges that I found, in this journey, is just not having enough resources to be able to implement all of the recommendations that our folks have for us, which is, again, good problem to have, but still nevertheless a real problem for the organization.
So how do you walk them through that, right? How do you guide them to say, yes, like I want this because you're telling me the things that are broken. But at the same time, we can only fix so much at a certain rate of speed and change and all the other things. But like, how do you not discourage them from bringing those things? If you're like, listen, I have to prioritize what are the things that we're going to fix. Like, how do you not discourage them in that process? Yeah,
you kind of answered part of the question already, right? So when speaking with them and they say, hey, look at, these are my issues. This tool is not working well. The tooling is no good and is causing me to rework the parts. So it is, okay, do me a favor. Can you make a list of the tooling of the one that's the most painful for you? And then we can give that to the engineering group to work on that first, second, third. Mm-hmm. So one is, asking them to prioritize, and then two is certainly explaining that, listen, it's not going to change overnight. But you have our commitment to the long-term solutions that we want to make this better. So you do have to ask for some patience, and then as you had mentioned, you got to prioritize, and then most importantly after that, execute. So again, part of that extreme ownership is prioritize and execute, because you're in a situation where you're fighting multiple fires, or of the Navy SEALs, they had a lot of things going on that are life or death, not necessarily just the manufacturing, but the fact is that you can only solve so many problems at once. So they had to prioritize what was the most important, and then execute on the solution for those problems.
Yeah, I think the other part that is so interesting to me about like the extreme ownership and truly like pushing that out in your organization is shifting the culture from more of like blame focused to like extreme ownership. And I think for me, in I've had a ton of people on my team in my time at Charles IT, and we're same culture. We really push people to own like their bucket and like be able to understand and say like I messed something up, and like I didn't focus on this, or I didn't put enough time here, and like whatever the reasoning behind it is removing the like fear of, if I say that I messed something up or I did something wrong, that like I'm going to lose my job, or I'm going to be looked at differently by the organization. Like, how do you instill the mind shift in your team that like it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to mess up? Like, how do you empower that?
Yeah, it's a good question. That to me is an easy one. So typically, anything that happens, the first thing we say is, okay, or do we learn from that, right? So it's more of, okay, something went wrong. Yeah. That's fine. Don't mind, but what do we learn from it, and how do we make sure that it doesn't happen again, or how do we put something in place to error-proof whatever it is, or whatever that solution may be? Sure. Is the first piece. The other piece that I try to instill into the team, and there's the term, put the fish on the table. So try to instill. Yeah, this is like we were with a Sweden-based company and heard the term of, listen, we've got problems, right? And it might even stem from someone making a mistake. Mm-hmm. But if you sweep that mistake under the rug, it's probably going to be much bigger ramifications later on. Mm. So if we say, listen, if you make a mistake, put the fish on the table. We're all very smart people. Collectively, we can come up with the solution of how to fix that, or to correct it, or to make it better. But in the same processes, once we put it out there, solve the problem, how do we learn from it? How do we ensure that doesn't happen again? Mm-hmm. So really, always first going to the two pieces of what we try to instill is put the fish on the table. We're smart. Don't sweep it under the rug. Actually, highlight it. If we have a big problem, in the lean world, you want to keep things visual. So if there's a problem out there, you want it up in red lights or flashing lights, so that the people can act and take action to fix it. Yeah. Well, that goes the same with people and decisions they make, not just with the manufacturing floor. So if someone makes an error, let's highlight it. Let's get together, solve the problem, and then ensure that you have a conversation around what'd you learn from it. And really making sure people are comfortable that there's only negative outcome of that situation is if you don't learn from it.
Yeah.
So if you constantly are coming at it with those types of that type of philosophy, then I think hopefully people feel that they're very open to highlighting other issues or raise my hand, hey, I made a mistake, and because they know that there's not the blame game. It's more of like, look, you have a team here to help you, so let's just learn from it, solve the problem, learn from it, and then move on.
Yeah, I think again, it's the not living in fear, right? It's like if I'm truly somebody who cares, I'm gonna work hard every day. Like, I'm never going to be the type of person that's going to make mistakes because I just don't care, right? Yeah. And if you're the person who cares, the way to like flip your mindset, in my opinion, is to always think solutions, not problems, right? Because you're gonna identify a zillion problems, but if you just go and say, this is broken, this stinks, this is, I don't like this, great. You're just complaining, right? Like, at the end of the day, what can we do to fix that? How can we make it better? What do you suggest? And I think for me, that's one of the things we do in our organization, in our onboarding of new employees too, is like, we teach them that mentality of like, bring solutions, not problems, because there's always problems. Like, it doesn't matter like where you look or how deep you look. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to find problems in every part of every organization. And I think that's probably one of the best things that we did in our organization, was enable people to be able to call those things out and call them on their shit. Like, hey, you didn't do that right, or you didn't put the notes in the ticket, and so then I looked like a jerk in front of my client. And like, like that ownership style, like, I love that mentality. And I think it's really, really unique in the manufacturing space, right? Because it is so process driven, right, through the things that you guys are doing. And so it's easy to blame like the process, right, instead of taking ownership for the things that you may have messed up throughout the process, right?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in hearing, maybe you have a story on this, but has there been a time where you've had to work with an employee who was resisting, like taking full responsibility and extreme ownership? And how do you work with an employee in your organization that may not truly align to that?
Yeah, it's an evolution for sure. So people, sometimes you see the light bulb go off, where it's like they don't feel that they are empowered.
Need some more of this, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful. Thank you.
This is a one pour problems first. Okay, we're refilling live.
Yeah, we're solving a lot of problems. We're on to the second pour.
I love it.
But yeah, so I found, in my history, you have a very high percentage of people they want to do good, right? They come in, they want to bring value, they want to feel like at the end of the day they've accomplished something.
Yeah.
And so for people who've kind of resisted that, like, hey, I know you say this is all good, I kind of own it, but yeah, Bob really messed up, So I would say the first always is to coach, mentor, develop, give examples, lead by example, walk through the specific, reasons why they would blame someone else versus, taking ownership themselves. And so there's a lot of time invested. And so I would say there's a large percentage of folks that you're going to be able to convert into that thinking and be able to implement and execute that way. Then there's, we work with Art Burn and Wire Mold, and we, calls them concrete heads, right? So you get, some people that are, we dub this the concrete heads that are just not getting it. Even a high percentage of time, I'll say, as you start to actually implement, if it was a Kaizen event or if you're walking them through, why would we blame others, and you can get them to convert, then they become the biggest cheerleaders. But in some cases, if you can't get that conversion, then you have to remove the concrete head, and that is part of the responsibility as the leader, right? So part of extreme ownership, they say there's no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders. So in some cases, in their unfortunate cases, you might have a teammate that's basically not on the right team. They might not fit the mold for the organization or the culture that you're trying to create. And to be honest, normally you're doing them a favor because they'll probably flourish in another environment. But there is the rare occasion where you have to remove that individual because you are responsible for the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And if that person can't come along, then they're going to drag down the rest of the organization, the rest of the team. And as a leader, it's your responsibility to address that. Again, always coach, mentor, develop, educate. But if it comes to the point where you can't get that to happen, then for the sake of the greater team, you look for them to find a probably team that's more suited to what better suits them and their needs.
That's definitely it's definitely a controversial take on, like, maybe not the right seat, not the right fit in an organization. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times, if we're like, oh, if they're not right on our team or they're not a fit in the culture or something like that, you remove them from the culture, right? And I think I had an EOS implementer on the show a little while back. His name was Joseph Jaffe, and he is like radical EOS, right? And so he calls the the employees that are we use the words like energy vampire, or he said terrorist live on the
like that one. Geez.
And I understand where he was going for with it, and I do think that's a bit extreme the way that it's worded, but I do think that there's a conversation that has to be had about that, because it doesn't mean that they're in the wrong, right? The employee that may not be a fit in the culture or in the extreme ownership bucket, it doesn't mean that it's wrong for them. But I think the biggest difference in what I think a lot of people miss when that's the case is, at the end of the day, we're bringing to light who that individual is and who we are. And you have to understand at some point in your career, you're going to learn who you are and what matters to you, what's important, what's your values. And I think that's just another way of expressing that, right? Like you're saying, sometimes we have to coach, we have to mentor, we have to do these things, absolutely. But if there's just a fundamental misalignment, that's okay, right? And I think it's good on you to have those conversations to say, hey, maybe this just isn't the right fit, right? Yeah. Whether it's for us, for you, the conversations I think are really important. And I think that's a key thing in any leader's role, to be able to be open and have those conversations.
Yeah, it's you bring up a great point, and that's part of I think a lot of what we're talking about today is part of our onboarding process and our screening process. Simon Sinek, to share beliefs, right? So when you are bringing someone into the organization, we really are trying to understand what are their true values and what are their beliefs, and ensure that you get that alignment from the beginning, because it's just so critical, right? You're going to get 10x of I think the results if your beliefs are in alignment with the people within the organization, because they're going to get behind what's going on. Mm-hmm. So that's a big piece of our screening and our onboarding process, is to share these are the values that we have as an organization. These are the things that we believe in. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Do you share that? And as you get that alignment, then again, they'll come in and fit like a glove. Mm-hmm. It's a great thing. It's actually really exciting to see when someone comes in and they're part of that mindset. They share the same beliefs and the same values. And controversially, so there's some that that you find that just at the end of the day that's not the alignment. So it can create quite a struggle for the rest of the teammates when you have someone that's not in alignment.
Yeah, and I think from our organization, I had a great story about it back in 2019. We were a very different organization in 2019, right? We may have been 20-something maybe 30 people, right? Very, very different. We're 150 today.
That's great. Congratulations.
And yeah, no, it's been fun, but these moments are the things that make me think about that, right? I go back and I reflect on this, and I'm like, all right, 2019, we had a bunch of like long-term employees that left, and that caused ripple effects throughout the organization. And for me, it was the thing that kept me up at night, because I was doing all of the hiring at the time, right? Like I was leading the HR bucket, and I had one person helping, and so I would work all day, go home, and I would sit on my couch, and I would be on like LinkedIn, like looking for people and all that stuff to like figure out who I can bring into the organization. And we got to the point where we were feeling desperate, right? We were like, we gotta bring people in, or else we're gonna crush our team. And we ended up working with like a recruiting agency that brought in like some temporary people. And we were like, thank God, like we brought in some people to be able to help and like not crush the team. And within a few weeks we realized like, okay, like we made a misstep here. These people are not, they're not great fits in our company, in our culture, in like our beliefs. And it came down to one of our employees, and I'll give him a shout out. It's Isaiah, who was Charles IT's first ever employee back in like 2006, still here today. He said to us, he was like, I would rather burn than have you bring people on the team that are not the right fit. He goes, and it's not just because like they don't know what they're doing, but he's like, I don't want to, build a relationship and these bonds with people that aren't going to be here long term, right? It's like I'm putting a lot of like energy and effort into these relationships, and like then I start to build them, and then they're gone, right? And that stinks. Yeah. And so it made us change the way that we hire and the way that we think about it, because he's like, it's okay, let it run a little hot right now. He's like, I want to make sure that we have the right people on the bus. And like for those who have ever met and had a conversation with Isaiah, like that's a really like that's a passionate thing that he says, and he is not someone who usually will complain or speak out on those things. But when something's that raw and passionate, like it really resonated. It changed the way that we operate, and it sounds like that's exactly how you spend your time on the hiring side too.
Yeah, good for him. I mean, I must say, for us, excuse me, culture is very important. Mm-hmm. I could tell you a number of people, as I've had some changes in my career as I joined, people come for the leaders, they come for the culture in an organization. And so to your point there, you might be, as you're trying to fill a temporary void, it could be sacrificing some of the culture of the organization. Yeah. And so it's something that we hold near and dear. And in a lot of the comments that, especially at ACMT, that I get from the folks that work there, is we like our culture. Yeah. We like who we are. We like how we do things. Again, absolutely still can room for improvement. But there's a lot of people who really like what we, who we are and what we believe in. And so, yeah, we kind of hold that near and dear. So as we are getting new teammates in, we really try to screen as best as we can. Mm-hmm. And so, I definitely take it to heart. I feel the same way, that you got to protect that.
Yeah. And I think the inverse side is also something that you have to spend a bunch of time thinking about. We talk about new employees coming on and teaching them our ways and all of that stuff, but how are you in the organization continuing to make sure that is top of mind, right? Because you might have people that have been there for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, whatever the length of time may be, but how do you continue to like keep that as like the top of mind of thinking extreme ownership? Like that's the way that we should all be thinking, right? These are our core values. Like how do you continue to like ensure that stays, in the front of mind?
It's definitely within the strategy of the company in terms of our communication and how we interact with our employees. But most definitely, I think it's something that in order to continue to keep that there is to weave it into every day, right? So mm-hmm. It's as we're battling whatever the problem is of the day, I kind of refer back to refer back to what we believe in and extreme ownership in that piece of it. And I will mention it to the point of where some people might be upset or you keep saying that, John, like you own it, like you're not a victim, you own this. So ensuring that even for the veteran employees that have been there for many years is that you're reinforcing the message constantly with examples. But it's and to the point where when we had the new employees that had come in, there was part of our onboarding process to take them through kind of, here's the vision, here's how we do things, here's what we believe in, here's our values, here's how we approach things. And then, one day saying, wait a second, we haven't done this for the employees that have been here for, many years. And so bringing that group in to actually take them through those slides, if you will, or at least that, what we're trying to accomplish and how we're trying to accomplish that is something that we did to educate and continue to reinforce the message.
Yeah. So you've obviously done an awesome job of doing that in your organization today, right? And so how would you recommend doing that for someone who is stepping new into an organization and they want to change the mindset to be more aligned to extreme ownership and people truly like owning their shit, right? Like how would you go ahead and say these are the things that you should think about first when you go in and start that process?
Well, yeah, a couple of recommendations is one, kind of learn about it, right? Study. So they have the book, Jocko and Leaf. They did a great job. They do have seminars and teaching that are around the concept, which is fantastic. But also, number two is take that and shift your mindset, right? As you're going in, you own that. Like you have the sphere of influence. So not only educating yourself on the principles, but having a confidence about you that you can make that implementation. You do own it. So those are kind of the recommendations that I'd have. I think that's like part of the bigger struggle, Sal, that I think people have had in terms of the leadership is like, yeah, I want to do good, but I can't. Like this is not my role, or this is not within my sphere of responsibility. Is to kind of blow the doors off of that. I think I found some of the characteristics of really good leaders is they know boundaries, right? When they're going about making their implementation, the vision's clear. And they're charging hard. Again, having the accountability is really important. But keeping their eye on the vision, being sensitive to empowering their team and having those roadblocks removed for their team so they could be successful. If someone's coming in, the mindset of like, oh wow, this is very different than the current culture that we have, is to say, look at as a leader in the organization or as an individual contributor, this is what I truly believe is going to help move the needle. If they have that conviction, that resonates, right? That'll resonate. So my advice is to, grab both hands, move forward, and then be able to speak, walk, and execute, around that philosophy and that mindset. And that was the biggest thing for me in terms of the book and the different tools is changing the mindset in terms of you've got this, you can do it, you can make an impact no matter where you are, and have that conviction. So if you go in with the conviction, you're going to have influence. Others will follow.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you nailed it on like. Regardless of your role, wherever you are in the organization, like you have the ability to own it, make decisions. And I know that, I spend a lot of my time doing the same thing, right? Where people think you're leading, the organization, you're doing these different things and you're the one who makes the decisions. And it's funny that like, I feel like I don't make that many decisions. I feel like I ask a lot of questions, right? And then, what would you do? And, especially now where my role is really focused into like sales and marketing. And I spend a lot of time like going back to like, well, where are we trying to go? Who do we want to be? Like that type of questioning. and my marketing manager, my biz dev manager, they're making the decisions at the end of the day. I'm like, what do you think? Like, what should we do? And like, it goes down to every level. Like even Paige, my EA, like we're having conversations about where do we move our desk right now? Because we're like at this random spot in the office, but the sales and marketing team now have their own space and they're very close by each other. But it's like there's a bunch of opportunity for us to go and move in these different directions. I'm like, what do you think? You tell me what you think is the best place for us to go and be to be able to help those teams be successful. Like, you tell me.
Yeah, right? I'm so glad you brought that up, Sal. I like that's, I think, one of my larger struggles with the management style, right, is you as a leader, you've been around, you're learning, we've been many different companies and have many different experiences, and some of the answers come very quickly. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, oh, I know the answer to that. But stopping and not giving the answer and but asking the right questions. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head, because I would say personally that's my largest struggle, but I think that's the most beneficial piece to developing the team is don't give the answers. Make sure you're asking the right questions to get them to think, and then come up with the right answers and to solve problems on their own. So you're really kind of like not necessarily, like that leader with all the answers, but you're the facilitator. Yeah. And so that's been, one of my own personal struggles, is to pause before you give the answer and to start asking the right questions.
Yeah. I love that, like, facilitator. That was perfect, because I just had a conversation with another leader of a manufacturing company, and he doesn't go by the CEO. He goes by head coach. And
that's great.
He goes by head coach because he's like, I can help guide and direct and like push people, but I can't do it for you, right? I'm the coach. Yeah. I'm the facilitator. Like, I love that like thought process, because at the end of the day, it's true. Like, these organizations, they don't live and die with just the leader, right?
That's right.
There's actual, like, everybody else is so critical to the organization's success. Like, the best thing that we can do is facilitate and lead and guide and do that stuff, because we need everyone that's in the organization for it to be successful.
Yeah, it's that's just the typical, you've heard of the typical job of a good leader is to make their job obsolete, right? Yeah. Is to develop the team, to have the machine working on its own. To be honest, when people ask, what do you do? Typically I try to say, look, I'm an educator, I'm not like the COO of a company, I'm an educator, robot remover. Mm-hmm. I'm a continuous improvement, through and through, but that's absolutely resonates with, how I feel about, being a good leader.
Yeah. So this has been an awesome conversation, and I certainly appreciate the time and giving your perspective. And as we transition out, I want to ask specifically geared towards the employee that might not be in a leadership role, right? They're on the shop floor, they're individual contributor in the organization. What key takeaways from this, like, advice would you give to somebody in that role about how they can be perceived as a leader?
Yeah, 100%. I would say no matter who you are, what you're doing, where you're doing it, obviously to take the ownership, but to look at how it can be improved and to drive that improvement. And there will be, and it's easier said than done. There's going to be barriers. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be adversity. There's going to be 1,000 reasons why not. There's going to be things that are shot down, not being listened to, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have the tenacity to say, look, I know this is right and I want to make the improvements, and you drive towards that, that's infectious.
Yeah.
And so when it becomes infectious, then it actually gets attention. Right, so if you have someone that's there that's trying to make this implementation, when they do that, other people see it, and then they start to follow. Right, how to make the job easier for whatever reason. that as they do that, then other people recognize it, and then they'll start to follow. And when that happens, then it gets more visibility, and then you can get more traction, you can get more authority, and you can get more responsibility to affect more change. So my advice to anybody in that role is, persevere, don't give up, continue to drive to make the improvements, take the ownership for where you are, who you are, what you're doing. And as a result, people will follow, people will notice, and typically in a good organization, that organization will reward that person with more responsibility. And then they can affect more change and affect more people and more improvements. And as that happens, then the responsibility continues to grow. So, my advice is absolutely, no matter where you are, I had one particular product line. I was a part-time worker going, I was working from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then I would go to Central Connecticut. My first class was at 9:30. We acquired a new company, and we had to stock their product, and I had an organization for that, or way I organized it. And then I found that people would wait for me to come in the next day as a part-time worker to say, what can I do, or where does this part go, or how do I manage this, because I had to organize it in a special way or a certain way. And so I took a lot of pride in that, and that got a lot of attention. So you can be stacking, or stocking boxes on a shelf, but the way that you do it, you can gain recognition from just stocking boxes. And I'm pretty proud of that, and I would encourage anybody that's in a role, no matter where they are, that they can make that happen for them as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, I really appreciate the time today, and the insight has been great, and I think there will be plenty of people that can get something out of this episode. So appreciate you taking the time.
I hope so, and I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for the drink.
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Cheers.
Thank you.
So the last part of this episode is the fun part at the very end, to put you on the spot. We give everybody a 30-second typing test, and then we rank you. And so the next episode, everyone will have to tune in to be able to see where you ended up on the list. And so there's no pressure, but I do know that you and Brian, a previous guest on the show, are buddies. There's going to be some pride on the line here.
Interesting. Okay.
The question is, are you a typer or are you a pecker?
I'm a typer.
Okay.
I'm a typer. I would not say the best typer.
I've seen some incredible two-fingered pecking going on that type test.
Yeah. Okay, ready? So I'm just going to start. How long?
It's 30 seconds.
Okay.
Easy.
On easy. Click to the next page. It won't start until you start typing. But
okay. Start test.
Spelling counts.
Yeah.
Got it. Oh, damn it.
Yeah, there's
It's
the
not
whole
just
thing.
Speed, it's accuracy.
Okay. So do I want to back up? I hate to ask quite. Do I want to back up to fix or no?
I would fix.
Okay.
If you can do it fast, fix it.
All right, here we go.
He's ready. He's in. Making sure that I'm nice and close to the microphone this time. Okay. But I love these because I get to spend 30 seconds just heckling the entire time. It's not only is bourbon a passion, but this is as well. So we'll see if you can actually pull it off and beat Brian. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see what we got.
Let's see. Just gonna see if it ranks me.
It says click to see score.
Show your results. Here it comes. I'm not going to shop on Vistaprint right now.
It's got to go through the free ad because we're
oh my God.
We're certainly cheap on that.
I love this, by the way.
What do we got?
Oh my God. Not good, I don't think. You said the lowest was 34? I'm sorry, the lowest was 30? Mm-hmm. 34.
Hey, not the lowest.
I am average in your whatever this category is.